Welcome, everybody, to another episode with the Paranormal Rangers. I am Michelle Miners, and below me is Stan Milford Jr. and Jonathan Milford. Hi, Jonathan. Nice to have you on.
Hello.
We have a wonderful, exciting episode coming up tonight. We have got the exclusive individual who is a NASA figure in the world with the U.S. Air Force and NASA certified flight surgeon for 40 years and of combined military and civilian medical service. He served as the chief of aerospace medicine at Cape Canaveral and Vance Air Force Base, supporting numerous NASA missions and classified defense operations. And this individual has delivered a presentation to the U.S. Navy Professional Development Symposium for 6 consecutive years, and co-authored a 2004 military medicine article on occupational health in the munitioned workers. In 2024, he officially cleared to present unidentified aerial anomalies phenomena, the UAPs, as a legitimate concerns for the Department of Defense. He now serves on the board of directors for the IUFOB, leading his expertise, support, response, disclosure, and public understanding. We have him live, will be coming on our studio, and we also have with us Mindy Tautfest once again. She is the proud owner and CEO of the International UFO Bureau. It is a groundbreaking nonprofit organization committed to uncovering the truth behind decades of UFO reports and advancing cutting-edge research into non-human intelligence. John, are you okay? I want to make sure you can get on and hear you. With her strong background as an investigative research media appearance as trusted UFO expert and proven track record in the community leadership, she was aiming to bridge the gap between scientific exploration and public understanding. Her work has been featured in prominent TV interviews and collaborative projects that spotlight innovative approaches to understanding UFO and UAP encounters. So today we'd like to bring on our guest, Mindy Tautfest and Dr. Gregory Rogers. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
You bet. And that was a lot to give to the audience of who you both are. But there have been some really exciting things happening, and I'm going to turn it over to Mindy to let us know what those exciting things that are happening in our world today.
Oh, well, mainly with the Bureau. And thank you guys for having me back on today. I know you guys are part of the Bureau. You're helping building everything that we're doing today. And Greg has been a huge catalyst over the last few days with bringing his story to light. You've spoken with me before, so I'm going to try not to take up much airtime here because I know most of the audience wants to hear from Greg. But I think that one of the good things about doing this today, it actually all lined up just perfectly once again, because we have seen the reactions mainly from like UFO Reddit. And on that platform, people have they're using their critical thinking skills, and it's wonderful to see. And they're going, well, why is this man bringing his testimony through such a small organization? And that's a good question. We are unknown. The International UFO Bureau, we haven't been advertising yet. And so to give the audience some perspective of why Greg is coming through us is because we have only been up and trying to get operating at a full scale for the last 4 months. We just signed to become a 501c3 in December. And then since then, it's been all about all of the background building with the database and the reporting mechanisms and everyone's wanting to join that is in the community and knows about us. So we had to put something out where they can now apply to become part of the Bureau. So we haven't done any huge advertising at all. This has all been word of mouth so far. But what we do bring is the years and years of professionalism and knowledge that comes with our team, including you guys. You guys are one of the big catalysts for it, with having the Rangers behind it. Anybody coming in with Indigenous stories or with any kind of Indigenous sighting will automatically go to the Rangers. And so we know that it's handled appropriately, culturally, fully investigated the way that people would expect it to be. And then we have other people such as Dr. Rogers himself. I mean, you can't get much better than the chief of aerospace medicine. And I'm wrapping this up so that we can get to Greg, but I wanted to give some context because we have Mark D'Antonio from The Proof is Out There. We have Seb Talk from Proof is Out There and Ancient Aliens. Your team from Skinwalker and from Ancient Aliens and from Beyond Skinwalker. Jeremy Ray from Alaska Triangle and Hangar One. So this team, and that's just to name a few. There's about 50 people that are working behind the scenes, and everybody brings such high credentials and just amazing experience to the table. So we may be small and people may not know us yet, but they will, because once we do launch full scale, we will really be a force to reckon with. So with that, I will step back, and I want the audience to get to know Dr. Rogers and be able to ask him questions and stuff, because he really is the man of the hour. And so here's my good friend, Dr. Rogers.
Well, it's good to be here. Obviously, the story that's gotten so much attention lately was related to the fact that back in 1992, through a completely inadvertent set of circumstances, I was shown the video of a flying saucer. You know, I'm not going to say it's a UAP or a UFO, because I identified it. I know exactly what I was looking at. So it was something I did not want, did not seek, but once something like that happens, there's not much you can do about it. At the time, I was the chief of aerospace medicine, and so I was the senior flight surgeon for the astronaut rescue and recovery team at Kennedy Space Center, worked with the 41st Air Rescue Squadron. Before every launch, before every landing attempt, we would always clear the box and make sure the security was there for the astronauts. And then if anything happened, God forbid, that we had a chance to intervene in, we would fly in, pick up the astronauts. I and my PJs would provide the medical care to the astronauts as we transported them to the helicopters, or from the helicopters to the hospitals in the local area. And depending on the nature of the wounds, we had several different hospitals available. So it would be a determination of which hospital to go to based on what injuries each individual astronaut had suffered.
Dr. Gregory, you've hit the major network news right now. We understand Newsweek picked you up, the Daily Mail, all these syndicated news outlets. How do you feel about what you've spoken about what you've done or identified? What is the feeling out there right now with the news that you've released?
I step forward because of what other people have done before me. Other people have gone before Congress and told them, these are the things we know. And a lot of them are not being believed. While I was still within the Department of Defense, I didn't feel like I could risk speaking out. You know, for anyone who's seen the 30-minute little dialogue for the 12 pages I wrote, you know, you can hear the whole story behind that. One of the other frustrations for me was my job was to protect the astronauts. And so one of the ways I tried to do that was by writing a novel about spacecraft that it was damaged in orbit in space and the lack of a repair kit. And so I pointed out that with the lack of a repair kit, they could not fix their spacecraft. And so then in my book, Impact, we had to send up an unmanned launch and supply them with the rescue equipment and the repair equipment. Today we have the International Space Station, and when they need supplies, we send up an unmanned rocket to send the supplies to the ISS. Well, in my story that I wrote in 93 and published in 95, I identified the fact that there's no repair kit. And the only way in my book I could get the repair kit to the astronauts so they could fix their spacecraft and come home was to use an unmanned launch vehicle. I wrote all of this in 1995, and 8 years later, 2003, we lost Columbia and 7 brave astronauts because of the very issue that I had brought up in 95. I had book signings with Buzz Aldrin and Jim Lovell Jr. and a number of other people within the space program, so that they knew about this. But the NASA management failed to take steps, and we lost that crew and orbiter. So I'm obviously still frustrated about that.
Yeah, that was a significant thing that happened for the U.S. and losing some of our heroes as that they're now recognized as. You know, it's really interesting. I'm going to show a photo that you had drawn. Can you tell us more about this?
Okay, this is a very poor attempt on my part. But what I saw was a vehicle that was about 20 feet in length and width because it was totally circular. It was sort of egg-shaped, but like a modified egg. All of the surfaces were very smooth. There were no rivets. There were no joints that were visible. The entire spacecraft was white, with the exception of the vertical rectangles at the 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock position, and then the horizontal rectangles along the 1230 to 230 range, the 330 to 530 area on the other side that you can't see. From 630 to 830, there was another rectangle, and there was another rectangle from 930 to 1130. Now, then when I first saw it, I had sort of this kind of view, but during the course of its operations that I observed, it rotated first clockwise, then counterclockwise. And so because of that, I was able to see the entire vehicle. The most surprising part to me was that at what I termed the 12 o'clock position, I saw the writing U.S. Air Force. Seeing a flying saucer is strange enough. Seeing a flying saucer with the United States Air Force on it is just even that much greater of a shock. It really caused me a lot of problems at the time. And, you know, in the 30-minute, 12-page thing that I read off that Tyler put on the internet, you know, I go through all of the feelings that I had. But this guy showed me something I was not supposed to see. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. There was nothing I could do. You know, realistically, it's just like, you know, Air Force pilots. You know, the Navy pilots have actually come forward with some of the audio and video evidence from the heads-up display. The Air Force has not come out with anything. So any of the Air Force people who have seen any kind of UAPs, UFOs, unidentified objects, you don't come forward in the Air Force and say, I just saw a flying saucer. So for 33 years, I kept my mouth shut.
You know, there are individuals who you're considered a whistleblower now, and there are individuals in the industry that have whistleblown throughout the years. Like you said, there's people have come before you. I was well acquainted with Sergeant Clifford Stone. He really acquired a library of information and had claimed that he had worked with Area 51. So for you to come forward on it, talking about this situation with what you shouldn't have seen. He saw a lot of things he shouldn't have seen, but he's now gone, and we need people like you to come and disclose what is really going on out there in the field of aerospace technology. And this is what you've brought to the table, per se.
Well, last April, 2024, when I gave my presentation to the Department of Defense, I had clearance from the commander of the Professional Development Symposium. I had clearance from the security people. I had 2 different groups of public affairs officers review my slides before I gave the presentation. Then the last 15 minutes of the presentation, I largely focused on the FA-18 videos and evidence about UAPs are real. There they are. If somebody says, well, I don't see any evidence, my goodness, it's right there. It is past the point that we say we believe that UAPs are real. We know they're real. Now it's just a matter of what are we going to do with it? We have known they've been real for quite some time, and people within the government have tried to suppress this.
Dr. Rogers, my name is Stan Milford Jr. At the time that you observed this particular craft, was it in operation or was it just stationary? When I initially saw it, there were some people walking around it, and because of the size of the people was how I gauged that it was about 20 feet in width. A siren alarm went off, and they all cleared the screen. Now, then I really want to specify, there was no level of classification on the video. There was no location for where it was filmed. There was no identification of when it was filmed. There was no identification of anything. That was a completely clean screen. If I had been shown something that said that it was classified and that guy showed it to me inappropriately, I would have had no choice but to turn him in. But that was a clean screen I saw. So I made a career decision, said, man, I'm not going to tell people about this. I just want to get out of here. I had a whole career. There were lots of things I was doing. We were working with the astronauts, the safety of the space shuttles. I was working with classified operations. I mentioned the Air Force Technical Applications Center. I'm not going to say anything about it except that I was on missions with them. So seeing the flying saucer that day was the last thing I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I had things to do, and that really screwed it up.
Was there any time in your career that you were threatened by any disclosures of seeing this particular technology? Because I know that.
No, because I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my wife for 15 years. Oh, I didn't answer the question before. When I saw it and the people cleared, there were some electromagnetic discharges, and that's all I'm going to describe that. And the vehicle just lifted as light as a feather off the floor and just stayed in position, absolutely stable. Then it rotated 360 degrees clockwise, and then it rotated 360 degrees counterclockwise. Mm-hmm. So through that rotation, I was able to see the entire vehicle. Now, then from the very top of it, there was a mast, and there were 2 or 3 lines, hoses. I'm not sure exactly what they were. They looked like umbilicals. So it could have been sending electricity to the vehicle. It might have been sending the guidance information. I don't know. But that was the only thing that connected it to anything. It moved to the left, it moved to the right, it moved forward, it moved back. And so I'm sitting there watching this, and the guy that had showed this to me, I asked him, where did we get this thing? Why are we making this? And he went just like this. We got it from them. So, wow, I wonder what that means. Everybody knows what that means. Well, anyway, it then started a different type of maneuvering, and the nose rose to about 45 degrees, so that if it was flying forward, it would have been a 45-degree angle of attack, but it was motionless. Now, then I'd flown helicopters, I've flown F-16s, T-38s. None of our stuff does that. For the helicopter, the reason the helicopter will seem to hover is because the rotor disc pushes force vector down. And if it equals the weight of the helicopter, it will sit in a hover. Now then, as soon as you move the rotor disc in a direction, you're going to change that force vector. So it's not going to be straight down. If you tilt the rotor disc forward, you're going to create a forward vector of thrust. And yes, you can get to 45 degrees, but when you're at 45 degrees, you're moving forward. You cannot stay stationary when that's going on. So that really startled me. And it was just about that time these guys knocked on the door, and the guy that I was with that was showing me all of this flipped the computer and screen off and said, "Don't tell anyone that I showed you this." Well, man, who am I going to tell that I just saw a flying saucer? So the three officers came in, and they asked why the door had been locked, and the guy said, "I was showing Doc, a rash," and I was wanting his opinion. I said, "Well, I'm getting out of there." So I said, "The rash is fine. It's not cancer. I got to get back to Patrick. My aerospace medicine clinic was in the hospital back at Patrick Air Force Base. So I got out of there, got in my car, and drove all the way down there, which is about a 30-minute drive. And on the way, I decided, man, I cannot tell anybody about this. So, like I said, for 15 years, I didn't even mention it to my wife.
Dr. Rogers, was there any audio accompanying that particular video?
Yes, there was, but I really don't want to comment on that. Now, here's the reason for this. I believe that was probably a test bed vehicle that was being operated most likely by one of the contractors for the Department of Defense, probably the Air Force. But I don't think that was a vehicle that was in the Air Force inventory, but it was being developed for the Air Force. Because of that, I don't know if that vehicle went on into any kind of production, whether more advanced technology was developed after that. But I do not want to give any sort of clue about the technology that I perceived through observing this. I'm loyal to this country. I serve this country diligently. I've had people who were friends of mine who died for this country. I'm not going to do anything that would compromise it. But, saying yes, there are UAPs that have been known to the United States government. I will confirm what others have said. And so I just want to add my voice to theirs. It's not like I'm doing anything different. So, it's not about me.
Hey, Greg, I wanted to ask, people on Reddit were talking about all of the different whistleblowers that have been coming forward. And I was wondering if you could kind of break down the differences between like the procedures that Grush went through to get approved to bring some of his testimony forward, as opposed to someone like you who didn't necessarily see something that said classified, so you didn't have to go through official channels or anything?
Well, to tell the truth, I have no idea what anybody else went through, so I can't address that for them. Each whistleblower that has come forward, I'm sure, has faced the same kind of obstacles, but that doesn't mean they went through the same procedures. So, I really can't address that question.
For Native Americans, we have had a long history of having contact or sightings on the different reservations all across the United States. There is almost a cultural history of knowing these things are there. They're in our what everybody would call a myth, but it's part of the cultural background of Star people that have come to Native Americans to teach them how to comport themselves, how to have moral values for thousands of years. And so I often say on these podcasts that for Native Americans, we're not waiting for anybody to make an announcement that these things are real and that they're there. We've known all the time. And so it's very different. We don't need that. When both Stan and I were involved in law enforcement, one of the things that we found out was that most law enforcement officers have had sightings of unidentified craft, and it's not unusual. It's pretty normal, and so we became the first two that just talked about it. And we went to see about buying some books, and we went to a conference. And I told Stan, I says, let's go see the crazy people, because you don't talk about this kind of stuff. And we met some of the speakers, and they basically told us, when we were telling them some of our stories, they said, oh my God, you guys need to be speakers. And right away, both of us were kind of like, no way, I'm not going to get up there and get ridiculed.
I understand entirely.
And sometime later, I got to talking to Stan, and I says, you know what? I says, I'm getting too old to worry about what people think about me anymore. So, if you're up to it, let's talk about this. And so that's how we got to be talking about it. I've seen, and Stan has, UFOs on many, many occasions. And, all different types, saucers, cigars. One cigar I saw was huge. It was about, a football field long. And I've seen orbs, triangles, capsules, and we've seen them together. And it got to the point where I finally got a dash cam. And when I put the dash cam in, after I got the dash cam in, I didn't have any more sightings. And I haven't had one to this day. So I'm okay with that. But we've also seen... Yeah, go ahead.
My wife is a big fan of you guys. I can tell you that. She happens to be a voting member of the Cherokee tribe. So we're familiar with some of those kinds of issues. But, this is not unique to just the Native Americans in one location. It's in South America. Earlier today, I was talking to a radio station in Australia. They have their own stories there. This has been around for a long time. Seeing flying things that you can't explain was in the Bible multiple times. You can't pretend that we don't know about these things. We've known about them for a long time. We've had proof of them. And, it sort of reminds me of a movie. Frank Drebin is this sort of nitwitted policeman. And he's standing in front of this building that's on fire. And it's a Chinese fireworks factory. And so all these fireworks are going off everywhere. And he's standing in front of them saying, nothing to see here, going back. Well, that's what the government's doing. They're saying there's nothing to see except for the fact that we see the fireworks going off behind them.
Yeah, that's true. And for John and I, we really felt strongly that we had an ethical responsibility to share the information from our investigations of the paranormal and supernatural with the general public, and to let them know that these things do exist, that they are real. John and I, over the years, there was some debunking of some cases that were hoaxed or faked and stuff. It was part of it. But for the most part, there was a big part of it that people were experiencing real phenomena, things that could not be explained with the sciences and physics that we know. So, but
well, the seafaring sailors for hundreds of years have talked about a giant monster, and everybody said, "Oh, it's just mythology. It's just mythology," until we captured video of a giant squid. And we said, oh my goodness, look at how large this thing is. It fits the category of what all of these sailors had been saying, but nobody had any proof. So they said, it's just mythology. It's only mythology until you have the evidence. Once you have the evidence, it's real.
Dr. Gregory, having been up in the Uinta Basin, I think you know a little bit about my story. I didn't start having these experiences until 9 years ago. And when I was assigned up to the Uinta Basin, working on a project up there, this thing started to happen immediately, sightings. And I've actually gotten photographic evidence that these things are real, and they're being analyzed right now. And so for me to talk took about 5.5 years. I was a little bit paranoid and what people would have thought, what I would have said to them, or thinking that I'm crazy. But then, someone, in the basin would say, speak your truth. So we use the word whistleblower. I think we need to start using and say, these are the truths, people that are telling the truth seekers. And, I know how it feels to be in your position when you start to see things and then you're afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, talking about the sea monsters that you just mentioned, the giant squid, they said that the giant squid sailors have seen these over the centuries and have commented on them. One of the things that I find is interesting is that the sperm whales will feed on squid. Mm-hmm. And they said that the biggest squid that's ever been analyzed had suckers that were 6 inches in diameter. The sperm whale that have been caught, that have been, harpooned and brought up over the years, some of them had scars on them, circular disc scars from squids that were 18 inches in diameter. And they just say, we don't have an explanation for it.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, nothing. I can't imagine what the size of that thing could be. But later on we started talking about this, and we see our fellow law enforcement officers here and there, and a lot of times they'll shake our hands, they'll pat us on the back and say, go for it. Because we're relaying all these stories that they've been known about for years.
One thing that Mindy has told me repeatedly is that she loves the analogies that I draw out. Well, here's sort of an analogy for this kind of thing. It's 1963, November 22nd. This guy named Zapruder has a little camera. He's just going to take pictures of the president as he drives by Dallas. He has no intention of anything except taking some home video of the president driving by.
Okay.
After the assassination, it was more than a decade before that film was released to the public. Once they saw that, they saw clearly the evidence that they were looking for of what happened. Now, Mr. Zapruder had no intention of becoming a historical figure that day. But out of sheer circumstance, he was standing at exactly the right place at exactly the wrong time, but with the camera that would document this. He had no intention of filming the assassination of a president, but he did. Once he did, you can't unsee the assassination of a president. It wasn't his intention, and sometimes things just happen to you.
Dr. Gregory, the question was asked, what apprehensive coming forward due to prior whistleblower attacks of character, intimidation, and what would you say to encourage others to come forward? Why did you wait so long? Basically, they're asking.
Well, I waited until I was finished with the Department of Defense, and I just retired last month. So that was why I waited that long. But the idea of coming forward is scary. I mean, people are going to make fun of you. People who never even heard my name right now are probably on the internet making fun of me because I said I saw a video of a flying saucer. I have other concerns. I have family. My son-in-law and daughter-in-law both work for military projects. I do not want anything to potentially affect them because of what I say. So, one of the reasons that I'm making such a big deal out of speaking to several sources is I want to protect my family as well.
Mm-hmm. I get you. I get what you're going through. Any other questions? Anybody?
Well, I can relate, in regards to safety of your family. And for me, I'm single. And, when me and John began speaking, we weren't married at that time and didn't have significant others that, would be immediately placed in jeopardy, I don't think. But safety is a concern. I mean, John and I have experienced what is referred to as men in black, at different times on the reservation. These individuals that come out on the reservation following major UFO sightings and this kind of thing. So their presence is known. I mean, John and I worked SWAT over the course of our Ranger career, and we trained hand in hand with these Navy SEALs and Delta and other SWAT teams, and so we were able to recognize everything about these operators that were on the naval reservation. So yeah, safety has to be of the highest priority.
Yeah, I was going to say we had a major UFO investigation, and directly after the very next day, Stan's driving through Window Rock, which is 30 miles north of Gallup, and he sees a sign on the marquee of the only hotel in town, and it says, "Welcome NASA scientists." And we contacted MUFON and we said, "Do you know of any NASA scientists meeting in Window Rock, Arizona?" And they said they contacted people that they knew at NASA, and they said, no, there's no meeting. But the sighting that took place was a major sighting. And we had helicopters flying over that area directly after. So there was something going on, and we weren't quite aware of what was going on, but we knew it stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest there.
Well, one of the things, going back to New Mexico, Operation Paperclip during World War II was an operation where we were trying to collect all of the scientists and technicians and everybody from Nazi Germany that had advanced technologies that the United States wanted to have instead of, any of our opponents, I'll say. The first place they took them was out to White Sands, and they took reconstructed V-2 missiles and were launching them out there. And Werner von Braun and the other German scientists were out there doing this. There were reasons that they did that. It just so happened that the 509th Bomber Group, the nuclear bomber group, the only group that has ever dropped 2 nuclear weapons in war, also moved to New Mexico. Well, what a coincidence!
Yeah. Interesting.
If you want to keep something hidden, you paint it, you give it a different name, you do something else, and then try to obfuscate whatever the truth is.
Dr. Greg, it's interesting that you would tie that in. I just found out recently, about 1.5 years ago, that my great-grandfather worked with the Manhattan Project. And, at some point we could have an offline conversation about that. But it's, actually got a recording of his voice that he's telling him what his employment was. And of course now he's gone, but the recording is still around. So that was really exciting to find out that I have an ancestral tie to Los Alamos. So.
Well, that is very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Amazing.
This is wonderful to have you on. Does anybody else have anything from our audience? Do you guys see anything that needs to be said?
Yeah, Michelle, I saw in the comments here, someone was asking if Greg could clarify, do you think that what you witnessed was something that was reverse engineered, or do you think that this was something that we had retrieved and they were testing out? And I want to add into that as well. I know on some of the forums, people were asking, why put a U.S. Air Force emblem on there? They thought that was kind of silly. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, well, anytime contractors are building vehicles, whether it's tanks, ships, airplanes, when they are getting to the testing program, they're going to be designated with military insignias. So that's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. One thing that makes me think that this was a reverse engineered vehicle was the fact that there was a mast and umbilicals to it. We were feeding maybe electricity, wiring, electrical signals through it, guidance signals. If that was a vehicle that had flown through space, I don't think it would have needed a mast with umbilicals. I think that was a reverse engineered vehicle. We were trying to reproduce what somebody else had done, but the people who flew the other vehicle didn't need a mast with umbilicals to make it operate. So I think it's a reverse engineered vehicle.
Are propulsion systems involved in this with the technology? I mean, because
anytime you move something from one spot to another, it's going to require energy. But how you do that is all the difference in the world. We had fast airplanes with propellers on it, and then somebody invented the jet engine, and all of a sudden the vehicles are flying faster. It's all technology driven.
This is really fascinating, Dr. Gregory. We've talked about things that, that our U.S. government does not want out. There are many people who have seen so many things, and we have also seen a lot of things. I've had visits for MIBs myself. What are your thoughts about extraterrestrial life involving what you did see? What were your thoughts?
Okay, well, if there was an original vehicle that the reverse engineered vehicle I saw was based on, it likely was not from a human intelligence. So it came from somewhere. I think we humans are awfully proud of ourselves. We think that when we look at a galaxy with 400 billion stars, we're the only guys around that have any brains. Well, there are planets around all of those stars. I believe in God. I believe that God made the universe in a way to support life. If God made it to support life on this earth, he made it for all of the other planets throughout our galaxy, throughout the Andromeda galaxy, the local group, throughout the entire universe. And to think that the entire universe was made just for the purpose of these tiny little people on this blue planet that had no significance, I think is very arrogant. There's got to be other people out there. There's got to be other beings out there. I just think that's unquestioned in my mind.
I liken Earth to a single grain of sand on a vast beach. The human mind really can't comprehend the vastness of the universe. We simply can't. It's too great for the human mind to comprehend the totality of the universe.
We can't comprehend the black hole at the center of our galaxy. We can't comprehend 0 point energy. We can't really define why the wave function of a photon is different from an electron. Well, if it's a quark, if it's a lepton, we can classify it, but we don't know why it becomes that. God made the universe, and he's the only one with all of the answers. So we can do the best we can. And, mankind has done great. You think about 500 years ago, the fastest anybody could go was on a horse. You go 5,000 years ago, what was the fastest thing you could do? Ride a horse. We get 300 years ago, we were still riding horses. All of a sudden, we develop a steam engine, and my goodness, we've got railroad trains. We've got ships that can be driven by steam, that can cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 4 days. How amazing is that? It's all technology. Elijah went to heaven in a fiery chariot, and it was witnessed. They knew it was going to happen. I've often thought, when I saw 7 people with these orange launch entry suits go into a space shuttle, and then we stand by at the shuttle landing facility waiting to rescue them if they need it, and then they launch up into the heavens. That's a fiery chariot, people. They knew nothing faster than a chariot, so what are they going to call it? They couldn't have said, well, we think it was a manned launch vehicle, probably of the Titan 4 class. No, they couldn't do that. So they called it a fiery chariot.
Right.
They couldn't identify what it was. They didn't have the technology of what we call today, spacecraft.
Well, just take an iPhone back to ancient Assyria. You take pictures of people, you show them video, somebody goes off a couple of miles and you FaceTime each other. They're going to think either you're gods or you're demons. So they're going to either worship you or burn you at the stake just because you have an iPhone.
That's crazy, isn't it? Dr. Gregory, we have really enjoyed, this is just the tip of the sword. This hour goes by so fast, and we want to have you back as things developed for you. I know that there are a lot of people asking questions out there in our world and probably even the universe. So based on, we welcome you on this exclusive show that you were able to come on and give us the opportunity to have you on our show. And we are so grateful for Mindy. Mindy, would you like to talk about IFUOB and what's going on for the future?
Sure. You know, I love talking about the Bureau. So over the last 4 months, we have been working so hard, and finally, with Greg coming forward with his story, it really pushed us to get things out there. So now we have the reporting mechanism up. We've started receiving UFO reports already. And so when we get ones that involve some of the indigenous communities, those will be going directly to you. We also have the membership application up. So if someone is very skilled in UFO investigations and has a history there, would like to join the Bureau, they can do that as well. It's all through internationalUFObureau.com. And I mean, it has blown me away. We figured that it would take at least a year to get our footing. And with Greg coming forward, it really kind of launched us into hurry up mode to get everything out there at least a acceptable level where people can have a place to come. And we're still continuing to build in the background, but we have lots of big things coming up with KGRA and with other things in the works. So people will be hearing more and more from us. So I thank you, Michelle and John and Stan. You guys are so wonderful, and I appreciate everything you're doing here on KGRA and for the Bureau. You guys are incredible.
Thank you. And one last announcement, Stan will be at the UFO Fest May 16th and 17th in McMinnville, Oregon. And we are so grateful that everybody could be on today. And Stan, we're so glad to have you back. I know there's been some delays in your with your health, but we're really glad you're here. So to our audience as well for being here for this exclusive interview with Dr. Gregory. Once again, thank you so much for being on Paranormal Rangers.
Thank you, Gail and family.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.